And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. A sad milestone. The nation has hit 300,000 confirmed COVID-19 related deaths today. Horrible, tragic, I believe unnecessary, and it goes to fit that on this day, the day that Joe Biden officially becomes president-elect, that this happens. Also today, and thank goodness, the vaccines are going out. In fact, the first delivery was made today by a Teamsters driver in North Carolina, a UPS worker, at about 7:20 this morning at Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Danny P. made the first delivery, and he understood this was a big deal. The news cameras were there. This is the beginning of the road to recovery. This is the beginning of the road to healing. Not just from the virus, but I believe of the entire country. Today can be that day. Today can be that day. Because not just did we begin the healing process, Billy Barr left. And I hate to make that weird transition, but the Attorney General, who has been Trump's biggest shielder, him stepping down a little early is kind of a big deal in a way, because Trump did throw him completely under the bus. And his resignation letter, I'm not buying that he wrote, or he wrote not under duress, because it is a big sloppy wet kiss. All talking about elections integrity and we need to make sure that we promote public confidence, and that how wonderful Donald Trump was, and how honored he was, and how fantastic Trump was in the face of the onslaught of hatred and the onslaught of naysayers. And it was really just it was remarkable. Nowhere in his letter did he reiterate his statement earlier that they could find no election fraud. They could find nothing that Trump is using to tear us apart as a nation. But that's okay. For me, Billy Barr going is the best part of all of this. Watching the rats scurry from the ship as it sinks is enough for me. And it is over. Today marked the day it's over. I know a lot of Trump supporters still think there's a path. Donald still he's got a secret. He's got a secret. Or as one of the tweets I read, well, who doesn't love a ninth inning 2-outs walk-off grand slam, because that's what Trump's going to do. Keep hoping, and maybe spend your last dollar on that. There are a bunch of betting sites out there. Put all your money on it, because you're going to lose. It's over. Today, the Electoral College went and they formalized the vote. President-elect Joe Biden is the winner. There's no question now. He surpassed the 270 votes needed to win. 306 to 232 is the vote. It is what it is. It's time for Republicans to get over it. Now, will they? The answer is no. No, they won't. And look, I say go out. Keep it up. Keep going. Keep losing at every turn. Keep appealing to every level of court. Go to the Obama judge, the judges that Obama appointed. Go to the judges that Clinton appointed. Go to the judges that W. Bush appointed. Go to the judges that you yourself, Donald, appointed. And continue to make your case every day. And every day when you lose, that will make some people a little bit happier on one side. And maybe, and this is where I'm hoping, if you continually go and can please keep going. Keep losing in every court across the land. Because maybe the people who still are clinging to some bit of irrational hope, maybe they'll finally get the message that no matter how much you wish and how much you pray and no matter how much you cheat, lie, steal, do whatever it is you're doing, it's not going to change the outcome. It's not going to happen. Time to move along. And what's interesting is there are some Republicans in the Senate now who have come out and said, yeah, it's kind of time. John Thune, the Republican from South Dakota, the number 2 guy in the Senate, said at some point you have to face the music. Once our Electoral College settles the issue today, it's time for everybody to move on. Now, of course, it was the number 2 guy. Mitch McConnell has not said anything. McConnell's the guy who, if you really, really want to blame someone, Trump supporters, if you really want to blame someone for Donald Trump losing, I think the right guy is Mitch McConnell. And I've been saying this pretty much since the couple of days after the election when the votes were actually counted. Because in some states it was pretty close. And having a check with Trump's big giant goofy signature on it would probably have swung the vote. So the fact that Mitch McConnell refused to move a stimulus bill with survival checks in it to help people make it through this pandemic, that, to me, the biggest thing that happened. That's the October surprise. If people were looking for the October surprise, because everyone thought it was the laptops, Hunter Biden's laptops. And really quickly, because of how goofy Rudy Giuliani and his little cabal of crazy is, really quickly that just kind of went, there wasn't even a bang. It was kind of like it was kind of sad. So they thought that was going to be the October surprise. The real October surprise was Mitch McConnell holding the country hostage for his immunity shield. That's the big thing. That should be what people are on the Republican side should really be angry about. How their party is split. Now we're seeing the party, splintering even more, and over this issue of, should Trump continue to fight and continue to go every angle possible. And you've got these 126 representatives from around the country who, they say they're going to push to not certify. And I did an interview that aired today where the host had asked me, what my thoughts of the 126 were. And I said, look, do I want to hold them accountable for this? Absolutely, without question. On a visceral level, I would love to take them out back and give them a what's for. But the reality is they can do this procedurally. They can do it. And it's up to us to remember them. It's up to us to hold them accountable next election. They can do it. It's still going nowhere because the Democrats still control the House. And there aren't enough crazy Republicans in the Senate to go, yeah, I think we can steal an election from the American people. I think we can do that. Not a big deal. No one will remember in 2 years. I think we have amnesia, but just not that large of a dose of it. And it's over. And today I was having people send me emails and messages and say, well, you don't want to hold them accountable and they're traitors. And yeah, okay. Let's say they are. Are you going to spend the next 2 years tied up in pursuing these 126 people? Are you going to spend the next 2 years going after court hearings and legal battles and having a news media, tied in knots, attacking each other, and the oxygen just being completely sucked out of the Biden presidency? Is that what we really want to do? Or, here's a thought, focus on the races in Georgia, which voting starts today. Focus on those races, get people out, win those 2 seats, give Biden a fighting chance with a 50-50 Senate, and Kamala Harris to be able to cast the deciding vote to actually get some things accomplished. Because here's where we are as a country. 300,000 people are dead already. They're talking about another 150,000 in the next couple of months. They're talking about 3,000 to 4,000 people each and every day from now until I guess March. The first thing we should be doing as a nation immediately is every bit of operational activity going towards making sure people get vaccinated. We should have, if Trump isn't doing it, I don't believe he is, but Joe Biden should be right now working on making sure that the drug companies know that come inauguration day, we want those 500,000 doses that we want those, 500 million doses that Donald Trump said, nah, we're okay. We need those additional doses, and we need it immediately. And then we need to have a 100-day plan of how we're in 100 days get everybody vaccinated, make sure that everyone's wearing their masks, and so we don't have to shut everything down. I've been getting these guest pitches, and it's amazing how the right has now taken this and tried to scare their minions into believing that, this is it's about socialism. They want you to be a follower. And, the one person's framed it, is this about science or is it about fear? And I said, no, what it's about, the reason we had to have the shutdowns is because some people are complete and total morons and they don't care about themselves or their families, let alone yours. So the idea of the shutdown was to say, hey, we've got to protect everybody from the dumb people. And there are a bunch of them. This is one of these moments where you go, maybe the STEM courses should be much more rigorous because we got a lot of stupid people walking around. And look, we're at a moment where there's that one, the one guy with the sign thing. Bill Engvall, I think, is that who it is? Yeah, him and his sign. You don't even need a sign. They're wearing it, or actually not wearing it on their face. That's the sign. I mean, I don't even need to look at most of their transcripts. Failed basic science. So in the future, we work a little bit harder on that. We work a little harder on connecting with people and do things that are going to make people's lives better. Look, do I want retribution? Do I want the pound of flesh? Do I want to hold people accountable? Do I want to see a new wing on Rikers Island for Trump and his whole cabal? Absolutely. But we got stuff that has to get done. We got families that are struggling. We got children who are going to bed hungry. We got veterans who are homeless. We've got so many problems that have to be dealt with. And I know. But Rick, we can do both. I wish that were true. I do. I wish that were true. I don't think it is. There's only so much oxygen in a room, and when the kind of thing that this would turn into comes into, it just sucks all the oxygen out of it. And then that's going to become the focus. And right now we're in the most dangerous part of this pandemic. Now until Inauguration Day. And then, the 100 days after, as people are getting the vaccine and we're getting through this season. If we can get through this, we might be okay. And then I'll say, okay, down the road, we can go back into it. But more importantly, this is something that we should be remembering come Election Day. In 2 years, when those 126 people stand in front of their constituents and say, I was one of the 126, people need to come out and vote these bums out. Every one of them should be tossed out. And look, I'm not even saying they should all be beaten by Democrats. They should be beaten in the primary by Republicans who want to take their party back to somewhere near the sane line, who are going to actually believe in the principles of our electoral system and aren't going to be on the side of people who want to tear it down. Understand, there is no path for Donald Trump to win. There wasn't. He lost by 7 million votes. He lost 306 to 232. Had this been the scenario that everyone kept putting out there, that Pennsylvania was going to be the new Florida. Pennsylvania was going to be the place where this was going to be the decider. You lose Arizona and you lose Georgia. This is a different race. And then you go, well, it's possible. It's not possible now. It is over. And there's a moment where you have to go, in a healing moment of the country, I'm waiting for the next Republican nominee for president in 2024 to step forward and begin that healing process. If there is a Republican out there who wants to be president in 4 years, who wants to run, now is the moment for him to step forward, or her to step forward, and say, we're going to take our party back to somewhere near sane. We're going to believe in conservative values again. We're going to purify the evangelicals who have been corrupted beyond imagination. Yeah, they say one of Madison's first vetoes was giving money to the church to do work for the poor. And he said, no, we're not giving money to the churches. There's that invisible wall, that wall of separation. And his reasoning was not that he didn't want to give money to the church. He thought that the money would corrupt the church. And I look at the evangelical community right now, I got to tell you, they look fairly corrupt. And it's because of who they rode into the White House, or who rode them into the White House. So keep bringing those suits. I've actually been enjoying them. Bring more. Bring another one every day. Every day from now until the day after Inauguration Day, because I'll give you the extra day. But every day, I'd like to see another one, and I'd like to see you lose again and again and again. Because one, it's it's going to really torture Trump. But two, maybe then it'll get through the thick skulls or the thick fabric of the Chinese MAGA hats. Just my thoughts. Love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
Nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1852. That was the day socialist leader Daniel de Leon was born in Curaçao to Dutch Jewish parents. As a young man, he traveled Europe. He settled in New York City and earned a law degree from Columbia University in 1878. De Leon joined the Socialist Labor Party in 1890 and became the editor of its newspaper, The People. His book, Socialist Landmarks, consisting of a series of lectures, became wildly popular. These lectures included Reform or Revolution, What Means This Strike, The Burning Question of Trade Unionism, and Socialist Reconstruction of Society. De Leon warned of reforms under capitalism as illusory. He argued for revolutionary socialism and soon assumed leadership of the Socialist Labor Party. As a former member of the Knights of Labor, he was critical of the American labor movement, often referring to the AFL as the American separation of labor for its business unionism and refusal to organize any but the most highly skilled white craft workers. De Leon also took a strong stand against racism in the socialist movement, stating, quote, "Why should a truly socialist organization of whites not take in Negro members, but organize these in separate bodies? On account of outside prejudice, then the body is not truly socialist." De Leon was among the socialist leaders at the founding 1905 Conference of the Industrial Workers of the World. By 1908, he and others looked to effect social change through the Socialist Party and existing trade union movement. This put them at odds with the direct action perspective of the IWW. Many left the IWW at this point, including De Leon and socialist leader Eugene V. Debs. When he died in 1914, more than 30,000 turned out for his funeral. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So while in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, and right here in my state of Pennsylvania, while official electors were casting their legal votes for President-elect Joe Biden, Republicans were putting on kind of a school play for their delusional classmates by dressing up and pretending to be electors, casting these imaginary votes for Donald Trump and Mike Pence. And I got to tell you, I thought it was cute. I did. I thought it was cute. Fun to watch. Brought a smile to my face. Just like when my kids were in grade school, like when my kid was in kindergarten and, messed up the line and everybody kind of laughed. Only I wasn't laughing with those poor folks. I was laughing at them. And what's not funny is that this is part of a coordinated strategy. Today you saw Stephen Miller, Trump's senior advisor, was on Fox and Friends, where he said, quote, "As we speak, an alternate slate of electors is being contested, is in the contested states, is going to vote, and we are going to send those results to Congress." So while it was funny watching them play their little game, they still have what they hope is their last Hail Mary or ninth inning walk-off home run. Still's not going to happen. And here to share some thoughts on, today's events, I've asked my good friend, attorney Erwin Aronson to come talk with us. He was one of today's electors here in Pennsylvania. Erwin, thanks for taking time for us.
Good to be here, Rick, and good to be with all your listeners.
So as one of the legal voting members of Pennsylvania's delegation, tell me what your experience was today.
Well, I need to. This is a rare moment. I have to correct you. I was an alternate elector. I was not one of the electors. But I was in the room where it happened, and I must tell you that even for a jaded, old, crusty, around the block more than once kind of guy, this was a very deeply moving experience, and it reminds us, and it did remind me, about the durability and the majesty of our democracy. So it was quite the experience.
Now, as I talked to you over the weekend, and you were talking about the security measures that had gone on, historic, at least from what I understand, historic security measures.
Very much true. We all of the electors and the three of us who were designated as alternate electors, as well as the three tellers that were designated, and all of the individuals, the electors and the alternates and the tellers, were all designated by President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris, as is the practice under Pennsylvania law. The winner of the popular vote in Pennsylvania every 4 years has that honor and duty of designating the electors. So the electors in Pennsylvania each received in excess of 3.1 million votes, and each was certified by the Secretary of State, and that certification was under the seal of the governor of Pennsylvania, real electors, and each elector was given a certification, was issued a formal certification by the government of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, not by Stephen Miller. And the way this played out, because of COVID, and concerns for protecting people, it was a much, much smaller crowd. Of course, it was broadcast, so people had a chance to see it. But the only people that were ultimately invited to be in the room were the delegates, the alternates, the tellers, and a few officials from the Pennsylvania Department of State, along with a single camera crew for that purpose. But how the day started was earlier this morning at 9:30. We who were admitted had a letter that we were sent by the Secretary of the Commonwealth that we had to show, and we went into one of the garages under one of the buildings in the Capitol complex, where we were met by Capitol Police and Pennsylvania State Police, and they were dressed in SWAT uniforms. and we were then taken by shuttle to the Forum building where the actual electoral college convened. When we got there, we each had to go through some testing. They took our temperature, series of questions, showed our ID, of course, and went through security, and then were taken by shuttle over to the Forum, where the Forum building in Harrisburg, a beautiful auditorium, by the way. It is the home of the Harrisburg Symphony on other occasions, and often the venue for local high school graduations. It's truly a breathtaking room and reminds us of what we can do as a country when we need to, and we're led by leaders who put their mind to it, because it was a Depression-era building, a Works Progress Administration WPA project, and it's just fantastic. So we then assembled in the auditorium, and we each had to go through the very formal and very well-defined procedures that were going to take place and make sure that everybody was situated appropriately. And the building was under a very, very heavy guard of both Capitol Police and Pennsylvania State Police. And the streets were blocked off all around the Forum building, so no public traffic could move in that area for that period of time. We, of course, who were inside, didn't get to see what was going on outside. And even as I speak with you, I don't know what, if any, demonstrations actually took place. But as recently as last evening, I was speaking with the Pennsylvania State Police, and they had advised me with some clarity that there were credible threats, and that I did not dare walk from my office in downtown Harrisburg to the Capitol complex, that I needed to go by vehicle. That in their view, it was not safe or appropriate for any among us to walk there, even those of us who, theoretically could have.
I got to tell you,
So,
in listening to that, I find that all absolutely disgraceful.
Absolutely.
In this country, in this day and age, that kind of security has to happen. This should be a celebration of who we are. This should be a celebration of the process that we undertook, and a moment of uniting. And yet here we are in this moment because of the guy who lost by 7 million votes.
Yep.
We are ripped apart.
Well, it is a range of emotions that I went through today, and I know that many of my colleagues with whom I was involved all day went through the same range of emotions. This was a celebration of democracy, a reaffirmation of our democracy, and inside that room there was unity of thought, unity of purpose, and a true respect for what the founders and the framers imagined. Indeed, and my very dear friend and the secretary of this year's the Electoral College, Rick Bloomingdale, noted, the ballot box that was used by the electors in Pennsylvania was designed by Benjamin Franklin. This is, and that thread of history lived and breathed in that auditorium among us today. But on the outside, there was this fear, and it may have been much more than a fear, of people engaged in truly seditious conduct who refuse to accept what they demand that the rest of us accept, and that is majority rule that protects minority rights, as opposed to a refusal to give credence to that with which they just disagree.
Right, and I point out Philadelphia attorney or Pennsylvania attorney Lynn Wood's tweet, this 2 a.m. tweet that she put out. Quote, better to be safe than sorry. Make sure you have plenty of water, food, flashlights and batteries, candles, radio, Second Amendment supplies, and a plan to meet with leaders of your communities. Remember, we only have one president at a time. Our leader is Donald Trump, not Biden, with a picture of Trump pointing his finger saying, I'm still your president. This kind of heated rhetoric is not helpful, and I can't believe someone in Pennsylvania who's an attorney would say something like this.
Well, I can believe it because there's precious little that I don't believe. But it is troubling, and it's troubling because as an attorney, I understand and am intimately aware of the training we all get. Law school is substantially the same in every state and in every law school, with one exception in Louisiana, where the state of Louisiana is a civil law state, so the approach is a little bit different, but not relevant for here. And we all took an oath when we applied for admission to practice in our respective states and passed a bar exam, and that oath is to, among other things, uphold, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of Pennsylvania here in Pennsylvania, and the laws of both the United States and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And intriguingly enough, virtually all public officials who are elected to public office at the state and federal levels in this state, for example, take essentially that same oath of office. So this conduct of a lawyer that you just described, the conduct that we have seen exhibited by the Attorney General of Texas, by a Pennsylvania elected congressman named Kelly from Western Pennsylvania, from the district that takes in from Butler County north up to Erie and the New York State border, by the President of the United States. And this woman is, by the way, exactly right. We only have one president at a time, and Donald Trump is the president. And the office of the presidency is entitled to respect from us, even if we don't respect its occupant necessarily. The fact of the matter is that all of these people have, at some level and in some consistency, engaged in acts against this oath and against the United States and against, in our instance, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and against the people. And no less than Donald Trump, at about this time 4 years ago, declared that 306 electoral votes was a landslide. And understand that Joe Biden did, as you noted when we started this session this evening, beat Donald Trump by 7 million votes. 7 million is more than the entire population of the vast majority of the states in our union. And that was not the total vote, that was the margin of victory. So it's troubling. Some have referred to it as being seditious. Others have referred to it as traitorous. And these are real and meaningful issues, but we are at a point where this country needs to be united. It needs to be given an opportunity to heal. I was really very pleased this evening to watch President-elect Biden in his remarks to the country after the Electoral College voting around the country was very clear, and the winner was once again reconfirmed beyond any doubt. It was both a speech of healing and uniting, but also an appropriate takedown of Donald Trump and all that the Trump facilitators have done since November 3rd to upend and refuse to accept the will of the people. This effort, this ongoing effort, and this is the thing that has troubled me most, and you know this because of other conversations we've had, but this endless and repetitive effort to disenfranchise and repudiate the votes of people, millions of people here in Pennsylvania, to repudiate 2.6 plus million votes, to set them aside as if the people who cast those ballots had never voted after they followed exactly the rules that the public officials imposed on them, after they took every step and registered the vote and got a ballot and cast that ballot after filling it in and mailed it in, delivered it, if you will, in accordance with the rules that some other public official made, and did so in reliance on the idea that the public officials that controlled and operated this process were something that they could depend on, that they could rely on, kind of like the way our kids depend on us to come through for them when they need us, to get that new pair of sneakers, or to make sure that there's a good book bag to carry books in, or to give them help with homework at night. And this subset, this group of potentially, and this is a very serious charge, these potentially seditious people have gone out of their way repeatedly to ask judges and to, in the court of a public opinion, whip people up into a vast repudiation of the will of the majority of the public. Very deeply troubling, and it's not going to go away easily. And it's one of the highest and most significant items on President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris's agendas,
Right.
Because we have a country to heal.
Yeah. So last question I've got for you,
Yeah.
because there are these people who have caused this, have made this worse. Have, as you've said, their behavior is seditious and traitorous and potentially all of those things. Do you think it's something we should be pursuing going forward? Is there a way to hold them accountable going forward, or are we in a moment where, as I've said, we've got bigger problems right now with this pandemic and the economic problems that families are facing? I'm curious your thought.
Well, I think that we have bigger problems, but not those bigger problems are not the only problems. We need to reaffirm our commitment to democracy. We need to reaffirm our commitment to accepting outcomes in the schedule and by the means that the framers set out for us. So there is a day of reckoning for those people. The day of reckoning ought to be on the next election.
Absolutely.
And that day of reckoning needs to be addressed and made, and they must not be permitted to hide at the appropriate time from their own conduct. Everybody is entitled to multiple, many, possibly endless opportunities for redemption. But in order to seek redemption from the public that elects them, for whom they vote, for whom they work, who pays their salary, who provides them with their pensions, who assures their access to health care, they have to act like they want to recognize the impact of their conduct.
Yep, I absolutely agree.
Yeah,
And
it's not about disagreeing.
Come election time, we throw the bums out. Erwin, I appreciate the time as always. Good stuff, my friend, and congratulations on today.
Thank you very much, and good to be here. And I hope everybody has a safe as possible, wonderful holiday season that's listening, and that we soon all are vaccinated, and we can resume our lives again.
All right, good stuff. Thanks so much, Erwin. Quick break,
Thank you.
back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1995. That was the day machinists at Boeing ended their 69-day strike. 33,000 workers won increased pay and health benefits. They also won job protections against subcontracting. Contractual clauses against subcontracting were important, especially given the fact that NAFTA had just been passed 2 years earlier. The contract specified that the union be given 3 months' notice regarding any plans to subcontract out work. It also incentivized keeping work in-house by calling for increased benefits to laid-off workers and mandatory retraining and re-employment of workers displaced by subcontracting. These provisions came after IAM members rejected 2 previous contract offers. They were furious at the initial demands for concessions, even as Boeing executives were awarded multi-million-dollar stock options. At the time, the IAM and its members lauded this as a total victory. For a few years, Boeing abided by the contract they signed. Subsequently, Boeing bosses have routinely violated their agreements. Many of these provisions were lost in the 2002 contract and then recaptured in 2008. But the next contract negotiations witnessed a renewed fight for job security. Over the past 2 decades, Boeing workers have seen massive layoffs, subcontracting, pension freezes and phase-outs, and relocation of their work, all while the company rakes in billions of dollars in profits, gets lucrative tax breaks and subsidies, and has close to 5,000 back orders for planes. Subcontracting clauses are important, but can only work when they are enforced. Victories like the winning strike in 1995 can serve as a reminder for workers today that if they stand together in solidarity, they can win better wages, hours, and conditions at the bargaining table.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So evidently, congressional negotiators are coming down to the wire on a deal, $1.4 trillion spending bill that's going to prevent our government from shutting down on Friday. And as I've been saying, get ready for this next year. The hostage situation, the ticking bomb, continuing resolution after continuing resolution. If Democrats don't get both seats in Georgia, get ready for we need austerity. We're broke. We can't afford it. Sorry. Get ready for it. We need to cut Social Security. It's all coming. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on why we need a stimulus bill and why we need it now. I've asked Morris Pearl to come talk with us. Morris is the chairman of the Patriotic Millionaires, their website, patrioticmillionaires.org. Morris, thanks for taking time for us.
Great to be in your show, Rick.
So, we're in this moment where we're heading into the absolute worst moment of this pandemic. A time when people are going to be struggling because the money ends the day after Christmas. We potentially see millions of people evicted from their homes. Unemployment extensions are running out. We're looking at economic chaos, and yet Mitch McConnell's not letting really anything happen in the Senate.
He's just so concerned that, some undeserving person might get some possible benefit of this. It's just so ridiculous. You have to think about not just the millions of unemployed people, but think about their landlords. Think about the people who own the bodegas in their neighborhoods. Think about all the people that bring their kids to school. Think about all the people who are losing income if these guys can't pay their bills every month. We need to bring back the middle class in America. We need people who are paying their iPhone bills every month and paying their rent and maybe making car payments and buying a car. That's what we need to get this country going again, is all of those millions of people who don't know how they're going to make their rent in the January 1st to get back on track.
Now, you guys over at the Patriotic Millionaires, we've had on the show a number of times over the years, and I bring you on because you talk the business side of things. It's not, you're not talking about tax me more because it's out of the goodness of your heart. It's actually good for business. It's actually good for corporations to have workers with money in their pockets. Is it not?
Yes. Think about the last time you walked into your local bar. The guy who owns the bar, he's a lot more concerned about how much beer money you and everyone else sitting in the booths have than he is about the wages of the one guy who's standing behind the bar pouring the beer. We need people with money to support businesses. We can't make money selling to a few really rich people if the country is filled with unemployed people. That just doesn't work. That's not how America was great anytime.
No, it's crazy. And if you look at from the beginning of the pandemic till now, and to your bar analogy, most people are shut down, not going to bars right now. But I hope once we get through this, and we will get through this, but once we get through this, getting people back in those bars with money in their pocket. But to highlight this, you go back to from the beginning of the pandemic to early November. There's a group that claims that the wealth class of this country, the billionaire class of our country, pocketed a cool $1 trillion in increase in wealth, while you saw so many in the working class, especially the working poor, losing their savings and falling behind. It's not like we can't afford to tax them a little bit more. It's not like they couldn't afford it.
Yeah, half of our country, half, has money invested in the stock market. They're doing great. I'm wealthier now than I've ever been in my life, and I haven't worked in years, but I've had money invested in the stock market. The last month or two has been the best months I've ever seen in my stock portfolio going up. And think of all the billionaires and, the people that own Amazon and Tesla and Square and all these other companies are doing great because of the pandemic in part. They're doing fine. I'm doing fine. But the other half of the country, the people that don't have money invested in the stock market, particularly the unemployed people who used to be pouring beer and doing all the other things that were done before the pandemic aren't being done anymore, those people are really hurting. And we've seen like civil unrest. We've seen people marching in the streets. And yeah, people were murdered in Minneapolis and Louisville and New York and Philadelphia and other places. But it's because of all the inequality. It's because all these millions of people feel they're being treated like second-class citizens, and they're right. And they're falling further and further and further behind. And that's not good for anybody.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's one of the reasons that in April of 2016, I came out and I said, look, Donald Trump's going to win because he sees and has articulated the struggle of working class people. Now, I predicted back then he wasn't going to do anything to help, and he would probably make it worse, which he has. But there are working people in this country that are struggling, and the inequality is getting worse and worse and worse. And while it's horrible for poor people, it can't be all that great for very wealthy people to be to end up in a society where we have only the very wealthy and the very poor, and them having to worry about the pitchforks coming out.
We've seen people with pitchforks marching up Madison Avenue here in New York City, in Manhattan, to the governor's office just a few weeks ago. And I mean, of course, they got their pitchforks from like Halloween costume companies, because we don't have any farmers with pitchforks here in New York City. But the point is there. People are really getting upset, and people are hurting, and it's not working. And that doesn't work for anybody. They tried that in South Africa in the 1970s and 80s. That did not end well for the rich people. We have to arrest that. I mean, and Vice President-elect Biden, I mean, he's saying all the right things. He's hiring more people. They better actually do something, not just talk about, how many people of this or that type are in the cabinet. And they better actually come up with something that makes people's lives better so they can sort of rejoin the middle class, or else they're not going to be any happier.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's one of the reasons that I've been a big supporter of the PRO Act, to allow people to join and form unions again, and get a little bit of the wealth that their labor creates. Now, I know tomorrow you guys have an event with the Patriotic Millionaires, along with Congressman Ro Khanna, to talk about his legislation. Tomorrow you're going to be focusing on tax cheats as part of your Tax the Rich, Save America Roadshow. People can register for that by going to patrioticmillionaires.org. Tell me a little bit about the event.
Well, yeah, I mean, Congressman Khanna is sponsoring a bill to actually increase the budget of the IRS for auditing people, particularly rich people. Currently, audit rates for rich people has been going down and down and down over the last few years. And they've been auditing poor people who get earned income tax credits and child tax credits because it's easier.
Yeah, they can't afford lawyers.
They can't afford lawyers, so it is easier. But frankly, some criminals are getting away with stuff, and that's not fair to everyone else. Their plan is to convince people everyone cheats, so we should just get rid of taxes and shut down all of government because everyone cheats anyway. And that's how they're doing it. They're like getting rid of the IRS enforcement of auditing. And that's not right. So we have to change that. We have to tell people you can have confidence that your tax system is being run fairly and everyone's paying their fair share and everyone's obeying the laws. And most people are. Frankly, the things that we're most worried about are the things that are perfectly legal, like millionaire, billionaire real estate developers here in New York, just who don't even have to pay any taxes because of all the loopholes.
Yeah, we got one in the White House.
Yes, we have one in the White House. And we've got plenty of them. But we also have to worry about the actual criminals. the Republicans have essentially taken funding away from the IRS in order to promote their story that, oh, everyone gets away with it, so it's perfectly fine to cheat on your taxes. And that's just not right.
No, but that's not something new to Donald Trump. I mean, I remember going back to the George W. Bush years where they were talking about doing the exact same thing. They were shifting resources at the IRS from going after the very complicated, difficult to prosecute cases against very wealthy people and going after, as you pointed out, the folks who may have been cheating a little bit at the bottom to hold them accountable. Because, hey, you got to look like you're doing something, right?
Yeah, it's just so sad when there's these millionaires and billionaires running around almost openly cheating, and yet there's, somebody who lies about what school districts they live in going to prison for years. I mean, it's just so sad that they're going after poor people so much and letting rich people, like as Donald Trump said, he could shoot somebody in Fifth Avenue and get away with it.
Are you surprised by everything that we're seeing? I mean, in this moment, the fact that today we had the Electoral College meet, and it had to be under basically a military operation where people have to meet in a clandestine site and driven over to the meeting place in a special bus with basically soldiers and SWAT uniforms. Is that our democracy? Is that what we've turned into?
I mean, the president is trying to sponsor an insurrection, essentially, because he knows the actual government is not going to help him break the laws. So he's trying to get people to fight against his own administration because his administration is actually mostly supporting the laws. It's so ridiculous. He's the president of the United States, and he claims that people don't have the courage to back him, judges. Like they need more courage to back the sitting president than they do the challenger. It's just absurd.
And we're in this absurd moment. And the hope is that come January 20th, 2021, President-elect Biden puts his hand on the Bible, swears to uphold and defend the Constitution, and we start moving forward in a way that, as you've pointed out, makes people's lives better. And I say that starts with a tax code that is more progressive, that harkens back to maybe the good socialist president, David Eisenhower, and I'm sure you won't agree to go that high, but we need a much higher tax rate on the very wealthy. Not because I'm jealous, not because I don't think we should have rich people, but because we have such need in this country to address with our infrastructure, with our education, with our health care, with a whole bunch of things that I think we can do a much better job.
I would personally be fine going back to the way things were in the Eisenhower days. Things worked relatively well then. And the same people that are complaining now were getting rich then. So I have no problem with that. But I think we need to actually do something. The government, don't forget, it's not that the amount of money they create, because they do create dollars, has to equal the amount they take in. They've increased the deficit hugely over the last few years with the Tax Cuts Act in the end of 2017. There's no law that says that's the only possible number. They changed the number hugely then. We can change it again.
Right.
It's not fixed in stone. But we have to, as you said at the beginning of the show, we have to reject this premise that, now that Democrats are in the White House, we have to have austerity. We have to have balanced budgets. We can't spend money on anything because, God forbid, we should raise anyone's taxes. No, we have to make things more fair. We have to make people who make more money have higher tax rates than people who make less money. We have to tax wealth, people that make money off their wealth like I do. I don't actually work. I have half the tax rate that your technicians do, I'm sure, because I make money from my investments. I don't work anymore. So those people, as the President-elect Biden said, should not pay lower tax rates than people that actually work for a living. We should increase wages, and we should do something about the corrupt campaign finance system we have now. So those are sort of the three basic principles that we are trying to promote in order to at least arrest this inequality. Fair taxes, higher wages, and end to the influence of money in politics.
Now, I got to tell you, that sounds very strange coming from a guy who, I mean, you would be considered one of the winners in this game of Monopoly. You're one of the guys who you're at the top. You've benefited from this. You won.
I'm doing great. I'm doing fine here in my apartment in Park Avenue, but I want my granddaughter to grow up with the kind of opportunities that I had. And that's not going to happen if we have a few rich people and millions of unemployed people. It's not going to work.
How do you think that's possible in an era where we're moving into, where technology is going to dominate our lives? We're going to have fewer manual labor type jobs and more consolidation, more automation. How do you see that working out? Are you someone who supports like a universal basic income? Where do you find yourself on those issues?
I mean, if we need a universal basic income, then we should go there. At least we're talking about it. That's more than we were 5 years ago. I'm actually feeling encouraged by the fact that things like universal basic income, things like progressive taxation, things like taxing wealth and income the same way are on the table now. Those are things that no one was talking about 5 years ago. And this past year, 2020, some of our presidential candidates are talking about a lot. So I think we're moving in the right direction. I really do. I feel encouraged about America. I think our best days are still coming.
No, and I'm looking forward eagerly to January 20th. When we can begin to right the ship. And the first part of it is getting this virus under control, because like it or not, this is what's really killing business right now and killing people's ability to go to work and earn a good wage and begin to rebuild our economy. And until we get this done, I don't see any going forward.
Yeah, we have to get people confident doing things, going to theaters, going on cruise ships, going on airplanes, doing all the things they used to do again, going shopping, going to bars. People have to feel good about participating in the economy. Currently, the people who are making money are just saving it off in their bank accounts. They're not spending it. It's not recycling those dollars. They're not going to local businesses. So we have to get them confident going shopping and doing stuff again. That's what will get the economy going.
There you go. Last question I've got for you. They're talking about stimulus bills. There's a whole bunch of talk. There's a couple of them they're talking about. One for $748 billion, one for another $160 billion for with the liability shield that they want, and all this stuff. But none of them have the survival checks in them. Do you think that's something our economy has to have? Checks going out to people, or do you think it should be more targeted towards unemployment and maybe a little bit more means-based?
I think we should give money directly to people who need it. I don't think we need to be giving money to business owners. They're not the people who are hurting. It's all the people who used to work in those businesses that are hurting. So yeah, I think we need more benefits for unemployed people, and those are the people who don't have money to spend right now.
Yeah, and ultimately, the money will go to the business owners by servicing their customers. Morris, I appreciate you taking time for us. I hope folks will check out your website, patrioticmillionaires.org. We'll get links out on how they can do that. Also, tomorrow, the big Tax the Rich, Save America Roadshow 2020, focusing on tax cheats. Looking forward to that.
Thank you, Rick. Great to be in your show.
Morris, great talking to you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Make sure you check out patrioticmillionaires.org. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1990. That was the day that 20,000 workers in the city of Fez, in the North African country of Morocco, went out on strike. Austerity measures had hit the country's working people hard during the 1980s. A drought had made the situation even worse. Unemployment rates for those under 21 had soared to higher than 30%. Two labor unions, the General Workers' Trade Union and the Democratic Confederation of Labor, called for a general strike. Government officials agreed to meet with the unions to discuss their demands. But the government would not agree to specific wage increases. Plans for the general strike moved forward. It is estimated that more than half of the Fez workforce participated in the general strike. Large numbers of workers in other Moroccan cities also participated in the action. In Fez, bus drivers showed their solidarity by joining the strike. In response, the government attempted to keep bus service going by putting police and soldiers behind the wheel. This angered many of the young demonstrators, and some threw stones at the scab drivers. Armed forces clashed violently with the strikers. The government claimed the strikers started the violence. The protesters pointed toward the police. A fire was started at the five-star Hotel Melendez in Fez. Other symbols of wealth, such as limousines, car dealerships, and banks, were also damaged. After the 24-day strike, Moroccan officials claimed that 2 demonstrators had been killed. But human rights groups disputed that number and said 33 had been killed. Many more were injured. Hundreds were arrested. After the strike, the government agreed to raise wages by 15%. Many protesters were tried for their participation in the demonstrations. Some received prison sentences as long as 10 years. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Years ago, Robert Kennedy noted that making economic, political, and social progress is hard. For such advances require rejecting policies that sustain the establishment's profits and power. Progress is nice, he said, but its agent is change, and change has its enemies. His recognition that gutsy, honest leadership is necessary to confront the wealthy interests and advance the common good is directly applicable to one of the most important cabinet appointees President-elect Joe Biden will make, Secretary of Agriculture. The media and all recent presidents have dismissed ag as a second-tier slot that essentially belongs to the giants of industrial agribusiness. This has enriched faraway corporate executives and absentee owners, but it's been disastrous for farm families, small-town residents, and rural vitality. While the national media and their own government look the other way, a broad multiracial diversity of millions of middle and low-income rural families face economic and social devastation. Not only are farmers being crushed by profiteering monopolies at all levels of ag, but the larger rural community is also being run over by massive polluters and pipeliners, low-wage factories, predatory retail chains, and other corporate extractors of rural wealth. The result is a countryside beset by a surge of farm foreclosures, joblessness, Main Street bankruptcies, creeping poverty, loss of health care services, weather calamities due to climate change, lack of broadband, outmigration of youth, COVID-19, suicides, and a host of other plagues. This is Jim Hightower saying it's time for change, and the place to begin is with the Secretary of Agriculture. The need here is so deep, widespread, and overdue that we the people must assert our grassroots voice. To learn more, go to ourrev.us/agsec.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to. For information, visit hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So if it wasn't bad enough that Donald Trump lost in, all the states he was hoping to steal, the Wisconsin State Supreme Court ruled against Donald as well. Sorry, not going to toss out the 221,000 ballots in the states that he thought, he thought this was going to be it. This was his path to victory. But here again, even if that had happened, even if they threw those 221,000 ballots out, and most of them were probably Democratic votes, even if you had thrown those out and given him the state of Wisconsin, he still loses. It's over. It is over. And it's interesting that so many of the faithful have really they really believe that there's a ninth inning homer coming. They really believe the buzzer beating shot is coming. It's not. And here to share some thoughts with how we help our friends with the MAGA hats and the Trump derangement syndrome come to a bit of reality, maybe put their feet back on the ground. I've asked our good friend Propane Jane to come talk with us. Jane, thanks for taking time for us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me back.
So we've had a whole bunch of days of losing.
Yep.
Lots of them. And as I've been saying, let Trump continue to file lawsuits. Let's continue to have our kangaroo courts. Let's do that. I'm in favor of him losing every day until January 21st. I'm going to give them the extra day of losing after he's no longer president. Just so maybe they'll wake up and go, yeah, maybe we did lose.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think that's the only option at this point. And I think that's also why Joe Biden in his speech tonight really hammered home just those very objective facts of reality. Look, these are the cases that have been brought. This is the result. They've been dismissed for lack of merit, for lack of evidence. And just that repetition of these are the facts over and over again. And I think this onslaught of losing week after week after week, at some point, is obviously going to culminate in the inauguration of Joe Biden on January 20th. And so, I think it's just a testament to how delusional they are and how bought in they are into all of the conspiracy theories, that it's taken them this long to go ahead and accept what we've known, for weeks now. But again, I think that's also just really speaks to how invested they are in maintaining this victory that they won in 2016. And they really weren't prepared to actually lose it. They live in this world where they have so much confirmation bias on Fox News and on AM radio that, again, they don't see the world outside of that. They really can't understand how 80 million people actually voted for Joe Biden. They don't see those people around them. I read this article earlier last week that was saying that most Trump voters basically have no one in their social network that is a Democrat that voted for Joe Biden. They live in these very segregated, isolated communities where that's all they see around them. And so I think it really is, just like, having cold water poured all over them for them to see this reality playing out.
You mean they don't even have a token friend? I mean, there's no token in this?
Apparently not.
Well, for all of those folks, I will be your token friend, and I will help you come to some bit of reality.
I think that's what it's going to take. I mean, I think it's going to take them seeing him being gone. And hopefully, what I would really like to see is the news media stop paying so much attention to him, and, every utterance he makes. You see on Twitter, they're starting to really flag pretty much everything he says as false information. And it is going to take a concerted effort to debunk everything that he said and everything that network, Fox News, has, spewed out over the last couple of years, to really deprogram some of these people. And honestly, I think so many of them just will not be deprogrammed.
Right.
They will go into the next 4 years continuing to say that they were robbed and everything was rigged, because they're just not able to accept that reality.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring up Fox News. I saw this screen grab today that caught my attention. I didn't actually see Hannity's program, but there was a screen grab of Hannity with three guys with big giant hats. And I don't know what it is about the big, 10-gallon hats with the people in Texas. Sorry, not getting it. I don't know why you wear them inside. I get outside, not sure why you wear them inside, but whole nother discussion. But it was interesting that David Clark was part of this discussion. And immediately my mind went, isn't he from Wisconsin? When did Texas get him? Because I learned, thanks to all of this insanity, that you now have Alan West in Texas.
Yeah.
I guess he got thrown out of Florida. So Texas seems to be the new Florida.
I think we were the original Florida. I mean, this is ground zero here. And, they actually introduced some resolution today, to condemn the Supreme Court, and also to just continue to reiterate their belief that, all of the votes in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and all these other states should be thrown out. But this is where that type of mentality thrives. And again, they have that confirmation bias where they look around and say, hey, we're a red state. We have control of the legislature. We have control of the governor's mansion. And so they can just do what they want to do, and they can be as insane as they want to be. And there really, unfortunately, isn't significant pushback against that.
The hope is at some point there will be. But the reason I bring it up, the screen grab had Texans threatened to secede to New Mexico. And it got a lot of play on Twitter today because you obviously cannot secede to another state, let alone a Democratic state. I don't think New Mexico wants you.
Right.
But I did find it comical, and you got to wonder how many of the Fox viewers go, "Yeah, we're going to make a super state, New Texas, Mexico."
Well, again, I mean, this is I would think across the South. I mean, in so many red states, this is the rallying cry. This is the South will rise again. This is that same Confederate strain that always has that mentality of if things don't go their way, they can nullify, federal law and they can secede.
Yeah,
That's sort of their escape hatch.
Yeah, but here's the thing, Jane. I mean, the Civil War had the Mason-McDixon line there, and that was kind of a physical. That's the line. That
Right.
You got to be on one side of the line. We don't seem to have a line now. It seems to be all between people's ears.
Yeah. And again, that, flag is being flown all over the country. Because it's not so much about the region. I think it's this, mental, place where they don't want to belong to America as it's grown to be. They don't like the demographic change. They don't like the cultural change. And so they just want to escape from it entirely. They want to create this utopia that is devoid of, diversity. It's devoid of different groups that they don't feel like belong. And I think that's what's so dangerous about this moment. As you see the Proud Boys marching in D.C. over the weekend, and really asserting, whatever power they feel they have, that is what Trump has stirred up. He stirred up this idea among certain subsets of society, particularly white males, that something is being stolen from you. Your country is being taken away from you, and you need to fight back with violence. And so though it may not, rise to the level of them actually successfully seceding, I think there's always that prospect of them cropping up with violent activity, threatening people, intimidating people, even vandalizing public property, to just make their point that, hey, we're still here, we're not going away. And what's so dismaying about it is that law enforcement certainly doesn't treat them the way that we saw them treating, the protesters for the Black Lives Matter movement. And so it's that sense of, a tacit approval and an acceptance of their behavior by law enforcement that I think should have us worried. Because, again, as they've repeatedly said, this is the largest, national security threat to America's soil right now.
No, I mean, it's crazy.
So what are we doing
we're
about
almost living in alternative universes.
Exactly.
The fact that today, as our country was certifying their electors, each state was going through that process. There were states across this country who were holding a mock kind of, or they didn't think it was a mock. They thought we're going to certify our electors, and we're going to offer those, and they actually think that somehow that's going to work.
Yeah. Because, again, who's going to stop them? I mean, they actually showed up in Michigan. Unfortunately, they had to shut their whole, state government down because of the credible threats that were made against the electors that were going to be assembling there today. So on the one hand, they know that what they're doing is illegitimate, but at the same time, I think they want to make that statement because they know that nobody's going to stop them. And I think their goal is to instill this fear and this uncertainty because, look, even though all of us knew what the eventual outcome was going to be today, there was still that, fear that was able to permeate the airwaves and have us on the edge of our seat. How many times have you really paid attention to the process of, the Electoral College certifying
Exactly,
the
never.
vote? Right? But they've created this suspense because, what is the next crazy thing, the next unhinged thing that these people are going to do? And I don't think that, today will be the end of that. And again, it starts from the top because you have Trump still continuing to say it's not over and I'm still, fighting till the last drop. Now, maybe he's doing that because he just wants to grift and get people to continue to donate to him.
Which is what I said from the beginning. This is about fundraising and about list building.
Exactly.
This is about fleecing the last couple of dollars out of the mindless who really believe, and this is the dangerous part, because the people who are doing this stuff, I think they know it's over.
Yeah.
But the people who are at the bottom, who really, truly, the true believers, the ones who, the evangelicals of the political movement, they're the dangerous ones, because I actually know somebody who thinks that you just wait, he's going to pull it out.
Yeah.
And I'm going, no, he's not. There's literally no way for him to pull this out.
Yeah, they really do believe that. But I think as long as they have that hope, you can continue to keep them as a captive audience, and an audience being the operative word, because I fully think that Trump intends to, continue to have a mouthpiece. Maybe not, in the established Republican Party so much, but certainly in terms of him being this reality TV type person, this is something he can fold over into, a network if he, wants to do that. He can continue to have these people under his spell mentally, and keeping the cult going. And so I think even with the Republican Party, although they've tried to curry favor with him and stay in his good graces this entire time, it's starting to turn its head against them, because now you see, like in Georgia, they're coming out and saying, down with the GOP. We're not going to vote. Now, who knows if they're actually not going to vote for Perdue and Loeffler. But ultimately, even when they're holding these rallies, they can't even keep the crowd, on task, because they're saying, right in Trump, they don't believe that the Republican Party is standing up to Trump enough.
And I encourage that. Please, write in Trump.
But I think that Trump has made this case for being the victim. And so, those people who really believe in him and feel that he's been victimized, if they feel like the Republican Party hasn't stood up for him, that's a danger for them going down the stretch, because I think they're going to actually lose some people to the furthest fringe in whatever Trump decides to create after he leaves the White House.
No, that's a good point. But I'm looking at these 126 people who have signed on to the suit, and I've had, I did an interview yesterday with someone. No, we've got to go get them, and we've got to hold them accountable. And I'm like, yeah, that's what the elections are for. They have the right to go and do what I believe they have the right to do what they're doing. We just have to hold them accountable for doing it.
Right.
Because if you're going to go, and I made this, and I don't think many people knew, if you're going to go after them now, you should have gone after Stephanie Tubb Jones back in 2005 when she did the same thing. Only she was by herself. And I would say that's courageous when you got 126 other people who are on the coup attempt.
Yeah.
And from the way it was explained to me, she told everybody she was going to do it. She understood it was just a protest, and it wasn't actually going to overturn the election. But these are people who I think it's in their right to do. But we got to hold them accountable and remind people when it comes to election time.
Absolutely. But again, I think we also have to remember that, most of these people, they come from very red districts. They have constituents that are literally on the phone telling them to do everything they can to keep Trump in office. And so they are actually answering to a constituency that wants this type of sedition.
Yeah.
And so again, yes, we can try to hold them accountable, but again, I think the real danger there is that they actually have people who voted for them and wanted them to do that.
No,
and
but here's my question then.
Continue to be obstructionist.
Right, but this comes back to the wind's turning. At some point, if Trump is out of the limelight, at some point down the road, does the Republican Party find its soul? Because look, I believe Mitch McConnell did this on purpose.
Yeah.
I believe McConnell threw him under the bus by not getting a stimulus package put through so he could put his giant goofy signature on something.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
And I think that the calculus of that was this is the October surprise. It wasn't Hunter Biden's laptop. It was Mitch McConnell not moving a stimulus bill. And that he lost. And there's got to be a moment where McConnell then reasserts his monetary power and brings those people back around. And I think at some point McConnell, does away with them and brings in a whole his kind of crazy, not the Trump crazy.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, I definitely think that, even as far back as the impeachment, I think there was a recognition among establishment Republicans that Trump was dead weight. And I think they didn't know how to get out from under him. And what better way than, like you said, to just, basically put him out there as somebody who was ineffective during the pandemic and basically did nothing for the American people. And certainly, he holds the keys to the castle, McConnell does. And so I think that's very significant that he didn't move forward on any stimulus legislation or, anything meaningful as things continued to get worse. But, I don't know if ultimately he's going to be able to replace or sort of return the Republican Party to a point that it was at, say 8 years ago. I really do think that, with each election, they continue to get more and more fringe members. I mean, remember when the Tea Party came in and it was, at that point they were the fringe and there were still a majority of the Republicans that were there that were kind of your standard bearer Republicans that have been there for the last couple of decades. But with each successive election, they've continued to elect more and more cult members. And so I don't even think the Republicans in the Senate are have counterparts in the House. I mean, they look like completely different Republican parties between the Senate and the House. And so, McConnell, it's hard to tell what he's going to do ultimately. I mean, I think that, there's so much focus on him, but he doesn't actually want to make things better.
No. He doesn't want to make things better for us.
No.
He wants to make things better for corporate America, for the very wealthy, which is why I can't believe this has flown. But the reason he has held up this stimulus package and the survival checks is because he wants an immunity shield for employers.
Exactly.
I mean, that's his number one sticking point. We can get into Lindsey Graham saying it was too much, or other Republicans saying his number one thing. It's it. We have to provide immunity for employers.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so craven and again sociopathic, and it just shows how much distance there is between them and the average American who really is out there suffering right now. And I don't know, how they're going to get anything passed. That helps things when at the end of the day they're just so focused on making sure corporations have all the money they can and none of the liability for what's going on right now. You would hope that they would be able to give businesses some protection so that they could, afford to pay their workers and allow them to stay at home in some sort of modified lockdown, not as stringent as we started out at the beginning of the pandemic. But again, I mean, 300,000 people dead. I mean, that's the number that I keep coming back to. 3,000 people dying every single day. I'm sort of glad that we're past this election finally, because there really is real work to be done to stop the genocide.
Yep.
And so I'm hoping over the next couple of weeks they'll get their heads out of their butts. And it stopped being about, do you think he's the president-elect, or do you, what do you think about Trump's latest gambit, et cetera, and just move on to actually doing the work to put the country back together.
Yeah, sadly, I don't see anything like that happening until January 20th. I think we're going to be treated to the latest conspiracy theories and the latest rats jumping ship. Today, obviously, the latest rat to jump ship is Billy Barr. Who, I got to tell you, I read the resignation letter. I've never quit a job with that kind of flowery language about my employer, how wonderful they are and how nothing could have gotten done without them. And it was the biggest, sloppiest wet kiss.
It really was.
It was, it's the kind of things you find in a brothel, to be honest.
It makes you wonder if he actually even wrote it.
See, that's what I said. I said there's, someone said there's no way he wrote it, and I agreed. I can't imagine that he would have sat down and read and written out that kind of a letter, because the guy's soulless. I just don't see him doing that.
Well, and again, it's like, how did you not make it the last 5 weeks? You know what I'm saying? After all of the water he's carried for Trump this entire time, what was it that actually, what was the straw that broke the camel's back at this point? Was it that he didn't want to go along with him, pardoning everybody he knows? I mean, what is it?
He wanted to be home for Christmas. It's like a Hallmark movie. It's a Trump Hallmark movie. Billy will be home for Christmas. And you see him in his goofy glasses and in a big cardigan sweater, sitting by the fireplace, ripping wings off of flies or something.
No, I mean, I'm just not convinced by that. I'm not convinced that he's just such a family man that he wants to go spend time with his family for Christmas. And I guess maybe we'll find something out. Maybe it was the fact that he wouldn't go along with Trump's delusions about the election being stolen from him. Maybe that was the beginning of the slide. And I've also seen some speculation that it was because, he withheld this information that Hunter Biden was under investigation. And, maybe he's salty about the fact that he didn't have his sort of Comey moment in the election, and he's holding Barr accountable for that.
Yep. Well, no, that came out during the interview over the weekend. That he was miffed about that, and you knew he was. That was supposed to be the October surprise. The laptops, they were popping up all over the place.
Exactly. I mean, maybe that's what it is. I mean, maybe that's why he couldn't just serve out the final 5 weeks. Yeah,
because look, Trump can't be responsible. It's got to be somebody else's fault. But finally, I want to get your thoughts on today. The voting began in Georgia. Early voting began from now until January 5th. I hope that I know people who are making calls into Georgia. And I got to tell you, be honest with you, I'm glad I don't live in Georgia.
Oh, me too.
There's a bunch of reasons, but now election season, glad I'm not living there.
Yeah, I mean this is unprecedented, actually, having two Senate races at the exact same time. But I just really commend Stacey Abrams for the work that she's done in terms of getting out the vote. They have 1 million requests for absentee ballots, and all eyes are on Georgia. I mean, I hope they can pull it off, because I think the consequences of them not pulling off would be very dire. In terms of, getting any meaningful legislation passed through Congress. But this is just one of those moments where, I hope that people are not fatigued already from the election in November, and that they're willing to, finish the job.
Yep. And that's it. You got to finish the job. And for all those people who are angry that and believe that the election was stolen from Donald Trump, the proper recourse is to write him in for both Senate seats, because he should be able to, if he wins both of them, he can do both jobs at once.
Well, I think Newt Gingrich.
I'm kidding. That's a joke. Don't call the Federal Elections Commission on me and get me thrown in jail for spreading false information.
Misinformation.
It was a joke.
I think Newt Gingrich really gave away the whole plot line here, in that, he's railing against these Republican officials and saying, why are you putting more drop boxes? Why are you making it easier to vote? Basically admitting that Republicans can't win when people actually vote.
Yep.
And I think the way that they have vilified Stacey Abrams really is a testament to how strong she is, and how much work she's done there on the ground. And they're fearful of her. Yep. I think they're fearful of the power that she has in moving the electorate there and actually turning that state blue. It's something they didn't see happening. And I think for there to be this one person who, thankfully I was so glad to see her there tallying the votes, the Electoral College votes today in Georgia, because as somebody who's not elected, she still holds so much power in that state. And they should be scared of her.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Georgia being a solidly blue state.
Yeah, me
if they
too.
get the vote, as one of my friends who lives there says, if you let people vote, we're a blue state. It's that simple. But Jane, I appreciate the time. Always great talking with you. Happy day. It's not over yet, but
Right.
but close.
Well, you have a great week and be safe. Thanks for having me.
You as well, and I hope you have a good holiday, because we're done for the year. This is our final Monday for the year.
All right. Well, I'll see you in 2021.
Outstanding. Thanks so much, our good friend Propane Jane. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
The Arctic really has achieved a new normal.
Scientists warn of Arctic's dramatic transformation. Trump EPA makes it even harder to enact new pollution rules. Plus, bad news for big oil. New York State's giant pension fund is divesting from fossil fuels.
All of that good, bad news and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
People talk about like the Green New Deal, like AOC is going to personally come in your house and steal your Christmas presents and then replace it with a lump of coal and then come back and replace the lump of coal with a solar panel.
Oh, like she's not. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, it's been a while, actually, happily, since we've had exploding plants, but we got one again now?
Yes, unfortunately, we do have another chemical plant explosion, this time in Bell, West Virginia. The explosion on Tuesday night at a DuPont Chemours chlorine plant killed one worker and injured two others. Residents within a 2-mile radius of the plant were ordered to shelter in place from the toxic fumes until the fire was out. The cause is still under investigation. Meanwhile, the Trump Environmental Protection Agency this week finalized a sweeping new rule that undermines the ability of future administrations to issue new curbs on pollution of any kind. The new rule restricts the EPA to only considering costs to industry from a new rule and prohibits the agency from including public health co-benefits and cost savings gained from reducing toxic pollution, effectively removing the benefit part from its cost-benefit analysis. It makes it difficult to justify any new regulation if you don't count the costs in American lives and health.
And is this going to be one of those rules that they have made it difficult for Joe Biden to turn around when he comes in?
Well, the incoming Biden administration can reverse the rule once in office, but that process could take years. It's one of many Trump administration rule changes that are intended to handcuff future EPAs from protecting public health.
And another one of those rules that if the Democrats can take the Senate, they'd be able to turn around with majorities in both the House and the Senate.
Right. If Democrats control both houses, they would be able to invoke the Congressional Review Act, which allows Congress to strike down such last-minute regulations.
Hey, you folks in Georgia paying attention? Don't answer that. I suspect you are. You probably can't avoid it at this point.
Another disastrous year for the Arctic. NOAA released its annual Arctic report card this week, warning that persistent and accelerating warming in the region is affecting Arctic ecosystems and the entire global climate system. The Arctic is warming twice as fast as the rest of the planet. This year, it saw temperatures spiking to 100 degrees Fahrenheit north of the Arctic Circle.
Wow.
Sea ice extent was the second lowest ever observed in the satellite era. Plus, dangerously low snow cover led to record severe wildfires and accelerated thawing of permafrost. Both, in turn, released even more climate-warming greenhouse gases in a self-reinforcing feedback loop that scientists predicted decades ago.
That scientists warned about decades ago.
Arctic scientist Rick Toman, in a virtual press conference, warned that the region is rapidly shifting.
The 2020 report card describes an Arctic region that continues along a path that is warmer, less frozen, and biologically changed in ways that were scarcely imaginable even a generation ago. nearly everything in the Arctic, from ice and snow to human activity, is changing so quickly that there's really no reason to think that in 30 years, much of anything will be as it is today.
And they warn that has global consequences. Arctic warming has cascading effects around the planet, raising sea levels, changing ocean circulation, and new research suggests playing a role in altering global weather patterns and intensifying extreme weather events. Finally, there is some good news. New York State's pension fund, one of the world's largest investment funds, this week committed to divesting from fossil fuels. The state controller announced the fund will ditch most of its fossil fuel investments within 5 years, and by 2040 will divest from companies that haven't eliminated their greenhouse gas emissions, calling them a risk to the fund's long-term value. The fund will use its investment clout to pressure companies to align their operations with climate action. Energy analysts say the move could accelerate a broader shift in global markets away from oil and gas companies.
This is big news. I know it's very good news for a lot of environmental groups who have been pushing for this for years. This is one of the largest, if not the largest, such pension funds in the world to take this action, as I understand.
Yep, and it frees up billions of dollars for investment in renewable energy and innovative carbon-neutral industries.
Now, there's an idea. For much more on that story, all of the stories, and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I think we're going to hear an awful lot of these stories in the coming months, especially after Joe Biden becomes president after January 20th of 2021. I think we're going to hear a lot of this. A story coming out of Nashville, Tennessee. Evidently, the governor there, Bill Lee, had given a no-bid contract to this company that was supposedly going to do something with the coronavirus. Going to come up with a test to help detect coronavirus. It was a $26.5 million no-bid contract to this company in Utah. The odd thing about it is this company had no experience whatsoever in healthcare. Nothing. There's nothing there. What they did have, political connections. So they got $26.5 million, evidently, and the taxpayers got, nothing. Fleeced again. And this is the problem with some of the stuff you're going to see coming in the months ahead. I'm telling you, going to be a lot of it. And we need to have a commission set up. We need to find these people, hold them accountable, and throw them in jail when they're found out. That simple as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on, the top stories of the day. Our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst, Bob Ney. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thank you, Rick.
So you think we're going to see a lot more of this kind of fleecing of the tax dollar, especially when you start looking at that PPP money?
Well, I think you're going to see that. Well, if you look at the PPP money, that's an entire book of fleecing. Once we ever find out, which will be years from now, because the PPP money was never defined by Congress, and they're thirsting on both sides to do it again. And I think Rubio had made a statement, well, we're going to redefine it. But if they do that, they've really got to do their homework on it, because, 25% went to 1%,
yep,
of the people, and we can just go on from there, and we don't even know the half of it. But yes, that contract, Tennessee, there was a story in Jefferson County, Ohio, and the lady really that ran the company, she was from another state. She really didn't do anything wrong, but they charged her $5,000 a day. The county did, the health department, because that's what they had available for a site. Well, then she couldn't, produce enough tests as a result of paying that $5,000 a day. I mean, it just goes on and on. And that's one little county, and then there's a story on one state. So you're right. There's going to be more out there. Some of them, it's going to be, political connections. Some of them, they were in a panic to do something and didn't check it out.
Yeah.
And you're going to see a lot of it.
Yeah, it's sad. And again, it's one of these situations where the more connected they are, the least they seem to put forth.
Sure.
Now, the other news today, Representative Paul Mitchell, a Republican in Michigan, has decided, with what I guess like a month to go, he's leaving the Republican Party.
Well, yes, you're going to see some of this. When I came to Congress in 1995, we had some people that was on a national scale. We're switching, for different reasons into the Republican side, but then. Now, with what's gone on here, with protesting the election, et cetera, what's ahead, then I think some of that has a bearing on people like Mitchell of what they're doing.
Yeah, but is this? I mean, is this? I don't get it. He's got like a month to go.
Right.
This isn't a profile in courage, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. It's a statement by him. So
this is a way to not get a job when you're done.
Right, exactly. But I think you will see some of it, maybe not a whole lot, but by some people that are in. I don't think it's going to be a wave, but I think you might see a few cases.
So the big news today, obviously, 300,000 people have died from the coronavirus. The first vaccines were given today. This is kind of one of those weird days that you have this milestone of 300,000 deaths. You have the first vaccines happening. Also, the day the electors say that Joe Biden will be the next president. Seems like a kind of an interesting day.
Well, it is. First the electors have spoken, and then January the 6th it goes to the floor of the House. I've been through that. 2004, I was with John Larson, a Democratic member from over in Connecticut, and we did the tally. It was protested at that time by one of the members from Ohio, Stephanie Tubbs Jones. She's since passed, and then we had our vote, and majority of people opposed Stephanie on that. That was one member, but I think what you're going to see for the official January 6th there's going to be more members on the Republican side. They won't be successful, but I think you're going to see some of that. But today is step one of step two to where it's official, and step two is going to be January the 6th.
Right.
When the House ratifies.
Right. I keep seeing Republicans, and especially this Lynn Wood attorney woman, using the analogy that, we're in the ninth inning and there are 2 outs and, Donald Trump's still at the plate and we're going to get a walk-off grand slam. It's coming. Is there any possible way? Does he have a bat at any length to actually hit the walk-off home run?
Impossible. I mean, I don't have a lot to bet, but I'll bet everything I have. Impossible. There is nothing that can change this. Absolutely nothing. When this started, there was virtually nothing, but you had a process. Who knows? It's 2020, weird year, right?
Yeah.
So when it started, I could see the day after the election when they said, well, there was fraud, and people would say, oh, okay, maybe there was. They prepared cases. They lost case after case. Well, let's go to the Supreme Court. It went to the Supreme Court, and it died a quick death there. At that point in time, people should have said, okay, it's done. And there are still the fundraising letters going out, fight with the president, give me something from your wallet.
Yeah. No, that's what I said from the beginning. This is about fundraising and list building.
Right. Exactly. And it's about a notion that Donald Trump has that he may be, president again. Well, there's two notions. One, he may be president again in 4 years. He may run. But the other one is, the Trump TV, we're fighting the cause, keep going with us. We're going to restore, Trump to the White House where he belongs. And you're going to maybe see that in which case he will raise money off of a Trump news network is what will happen. So,
no,
but it's impossible that Biden is not going to be president.
Right. And I've taken heat for saying that, the 126 Republicans who've signed on to this lawsuit and are probably going to protest the next step of this. I've said, there's no pursuing them for treason or sedition or any of that stuff. We've got, and even if at this point in my mind, even if there was a long-term possibility of that, we've got other things that are much more pressing. This is something for the next election, in my view. But I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Well, I agree with you. I've had people that have said to me they need sedition, et cetera. Well, not really. It's a vote, and it's a vote that they have. It's going to be a dumb vote. It's going to be an ugly vote if they do it, but it's a vote that they have. It's just like the Logan Act. It's an obscure act. Every time a member of Congress talks with somebody overseas and somebody doesn't like it, well, we're going to put them in prison for the Logan Act. They're not allowed to do that. They're conducting foreign policy. Well, it's a slippery slope act, from years back.
Right.
And so I view that the same thing with the 14th Amendment and people that are saying would put them in jail for the vote. Well, good luck on that.
Yeah. Is there anywhere where it rises to that level? Is there a point beyond this where you see that they could go too far? Because to this point, I'm going, look, they've gone the legal path. They've gotten, beaten soundly at every level. They've done their kangaroo court things. The public opinion polls haven't changed at all. They're going to go through this process. They're going to lose in the next vote. So all of this losing eventually is going to, put them right where they started. They've lost. But is there a point where they go too far, do you think?
Yes, there is. I'll give you an example, and it depends on how they do it. But they can vote. They can say this isn't legitimate, et cetera, even though the Electoral College has spoke. They can do that. If they would begin a process where he's not the president, therefore we and then they say this, and we are not going to certify his cabinet or his judicial because he's not the president, then they've crossed a line. Then they have crossed a line.
Right. Now that's the Senate. I don't see too much crazy in the Senate other than Ted Cruz. But most of these people seem to be House members. Is there anything the House members could do to get to that point?
Well, they don't have the appointment, the process. Well, if they would, give you an example. If they would try to say, well, I'm not voting on something he wants, because he's not the president, then I think they've crossed the line. They can say, I'm not going to support him because I can't stand him. They can say that.
Right.
Or I'm not going to support him because he's too liberal. But if they would make the proposition that he won't be supported because he's not the president, then I think that's a problem.
That's
Sure.
where you see the threshold then.
They cross the line. Absolutely.
Yeah, because I'm like, if you start down this path, where we're gonna try and publicly gore them, this just is gonna suck all the oxygen out of the room for the next year at least, possibly two, and nothing gets done.
Oh, they can't. It's just like in a reverse way. If Senator Johnson from Wisconsin is successful in beginning the Hunter Biden, inquiry, when the Justice Department's doing something, look at it, he again would be in a reverse way doing that, sucking the oxygen out of the room. There's times and places for everything, and times and places when everything stops.
Right.
And those are examples, including if members just refuse to do something. But if they just pursued what the one congressman from New Jersey, I think it was, said, that they should be tried for sedition, and they actually tried to have a hearing on it, it would be a field day.
Yeah.
Against the Democrats.
No, I agree, and that's just one of those things.
Right.
Absolutely, and good. So, lastly, I wanted to get your thoughts on. Evidently, the story has come out that Jerry Falwell Jr. has spent just tons of money in his final couple of years at Liberty University, and actually spent a ton of money on what they're calling pro-Trump causes. Evidently, they had a think tank that they funded. They were pushing out stuff that had no peer review academic credibility to it. It didn't bear anything to an actual study. Just lots of propaganda, lots of pro-Trump stuff. Because I think he was being blackmailed, to be honest. Do you expect much of this stuff to come up next year? Many of these kind of hearings and that kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, it's possible, on Falwell. I mean, I think they've just begun to turn the pages on things that, that he has done. And he did. He had, he had a think tank, and, he pursued ideas and he pursued political causes. And this story came out about, what he did for the pro-Trump movement. But when you've got a guy like that in there, you never know what all on earth that they've done, with the money. I mean, you can look at several of the people like this and wonder where the money went.
Yeah, because, I'm looking at this and I'm going, again, we got a lot to do. We got the virus that has to be contained, the vaccines that have to get out, the economy that has to be rebuilt. We've got an infrastructure that's crumbling. We've got all this stuff. And my fear is we get tied down into pursuing these rabbit holes.
Well, and I think they have to be careful. For example, if Falwell did things, and if he did more things, there's a system out there to look at it. One of the problems with Congress, and it's happened over the years, a chairman, I was the chairman of the committee, but a chairman loves to, it's my jurisdiction, I'm going to do this, and they end up pursuing everything. Baseball. When I was in, Clinton was president in the House. They had a hearing on baseball. Right? They love to do that. Certain things are appropriate, certain aren't. Right now, just to fall back what you just said. I mean, we only told Pfizer that we wanted 100 million doses, right? Which is enough for 50 million people. Right now, the Congress, the Biden incoming administration, Congress, both sides of the aisle, they need to focus on how you get more of the vaccine, how you get it out, how you take care of it. Those are the big picture issues. And you're right, if they go down the rabbit hole, and especially try to investigate every single thing that happens instead of putting it through the proper course, they're going to waste their time, spin their wheels. And in the end, it'll be like the Benghazi hearings, remember?
Yeah. No,
15 of them for what?
Yeah. No, that's one of my big problems. We've got so much to do, and I don't want to get. Look, do I want to hold every one of these people accountable with every shred of my being?
Mm-hmm.
But there's also the practical part of we got to get things done because, look, kids are going to bed hungry tonight. There are veterans sleeping on the streets. There are people who are sick that can't get health care. There's so many problems that I think we have to go forth. And I know I said last question, but being from Ohio, today the big news: the Cleveland baseball team will no longer have the I word.
Well, I know I have friends that are absolutely hysteric over this one, obviously, especially from Cleveland because the Cleveland Indians. And
you said the I word.
Well, I'm still not completely politically correct, all right? and this just happened. No,
I still have a Chief Wahoo T-shirt.
It hasn't officially happened yet, so I can still say Cleveland Indians. Yeah, I used to support them when there was 5 people in the stands. Now there's 10, and I'm supporting them. But this is a big, big controversy. I've got friends that are going to burn the season tickets. Oh yeah. This one's not done yet. No.
Yeah, and as one person pointed out to me today, because I happened to tweet out going, all of this, all the pre and post name change merchandising is going to be huge, and none of it's going to go to actual Indians. And I had someone say, well, the people in India don't watch baseball, which then made me go, well, then what's all this hoopla about then?
I know. I've had people have actually confused that.
Yeah, well,
I'm with you.
It's the right thing to do. We'll get past it, move down the road.
We will live another day.
We will live, and they'll hit the ball, and somebody will go run and catch it, and all of that.
Right. Exactly.
As always, I appreciate the time, Bob. Thanks so much.
You too, Rick. Thank you.
Our good friend Bob Ney. Let's take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1995. That was the day machinists at Boeing ended their 69-day strike. 33,000 workers won increased pay and health benefits. They also won job protections against subcontracting. Contractual clauses against subcontracting were important, especially given the fact that NAFTA had just been passed 2 years earlier. The contract specified that the union be given 3 months' notice regarding any plans to subcontract out work. It also incentivized keeping work in-house by calling for increased benefits to laid-off workers and mandatory retraining and re-employment of workers displaced by subcontracting. These provisions came after IAM members rejected 2 previous contract offers. They were furious at the initial demands for concessions, even as Boeing executives were awarded multi-million-dollar stock options. At the time, the IAM and its members lauded this as a total victory. For a few years, Boeing abided by the contract they signed. Subsequently, Boeing bosses have routinely violated their agreements. Many of these provisions were lost in the 2002 contract and then recaptured in 2008. But the next contract negotiations witnessed a renewed fight for job security. Over the past 2 decades, Boeing workers have seen massive layoffs, subcontracting, pension freezes and phase-outs, and relocation of their work. All while the company rakes in billions of dollars in profits, gets lucrative tax breaks and subsidies, and has close to 5,000 back orders for planes. Subcontracting clauses are important, but can only work when they are enforced. Victories like the winning strike in 1995 can serve as a reminder for workers today that if they stand together in solidarity, they can win better wages, hours, and conditions at the bargaining table.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, as I said, the Cleveland baseball team will be changing their name. I guess it's not next year, maybe 2022, but they made the announcement it's going to happen at some point. And my first thought, honestly, was, you got to milk this for all it's worth. Which is why I think Washington's still sticking with the Washington football team. They're going to sell some jerseys with the Washington football team on it. But more importantly, they're getting rid of all the old stuff and having all the people race out to get their the old stuff. We're going to get the vintage stuff, the classics. So I think that's what the Cleveland team is doing. For now, the Indians are doing. Because I remember right when they were doing away with Chief Wahoo, which, to be honest, is offensive. I never really thought about it. But, having the big cheesy grin with the giant teeth, which I don't know that that's stereotypical. But I just remember going, wow, that's kind of weird. That should probably go. And I was okay with that should go. I don't know about changing the name. I don't know how the word Indians is offensive. And I'm sure someone will explain it to me. And I hope they do, because this is one of those things that at some point we need to have the conversation around, why it's offensive. Because my fear is, and this is something I've said before, my fear is once you do away with this, there's not an issue here anymore. So there's no more raising awareness on the issue of the plight of Native Americans. That's one of the concerns that I have. And there are numerous problems. And I have no idea how you address that. But we'll see what happens out of all this. I'm interested to see what name they come up with. I'm sure there'll be some kind of a lottery, some kind of a something. But my anticipation is not great. I don't think they're going to come up with a better name, to be honest, or a good name. Because I remember as a kid when the city of Cleveland decided that they wanted to become, synonymous with some kind of fruit. You know, because like Georgia, the peach, New York, the Big Apple. Cleveland chose the plum. And I have no idea why. I just know as a kid, having to stuff bumper stickers into a newspaper looking at it going, boy, this is stupid. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what name they come up with. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast, the Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Big week ahead of us, our final week of the year. Looking forward to it. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com.